Hey guys, my name is Ben Berman, and welcome to the Starting It Up podcast, where I interview all types of entrepreneurs, uncovering actionable steps and inspiration that you can use to build your business, your side hustle, whatever it is that you're trying to create, and live the life you've always wanted. Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome to the podcast. Today we have Mark Metry, who is someone that I'm actually really excited to have on. I've been following his stuff for quite a while. He has one of the top 100 podcasts in the world. It's called Humans 2.0, where he interviews, really incredible people like Seth Godin, Gretchen Rubin, Naveen Jain, others that are really exceeding in whatever type of field they're in. This is all about personal development, self-development, really becoming the best version of yourself that is out that's possible. And, Mark's a huge proponent of all that. And he's been an entrepreneur since he was in high school. He started a Minecraft server that took off, sold it, began a virtual reality marketing agency. But what I think he's really passionate about is helping other people, uncover their strengths and really have their life take off and be exactly where they want. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Mark. Tell us a little bit more about, your bio, bring us up to speed over to where you are right now.
Thanks for having me on your show, Ben. And, I'm just a 21-year-old kid that, really cares about a lot of things. And, some of those things are health, mental health, technology, business, opportunity, mindset. And so, once I sort of had those interests, I, just started whatever I could in the real world to, help me excel in that industry. And, so like Ben said, I host this podcast called Humans 2.0. And it's all about developing yourself in 2019 in a world of, misinformation and misconfusion. But, still the greatest time to be alive. So, I'm just happy that I can participate in that every day.
Very cool. Yeah, that's an awesome goal, and I can see that, you're doing already so much of that. I'm following you on Instagram, LinkedIn, you're just posting great content. I really agree with the sentiment as well that right now is actually like the best time to kind of be around. Although there are so many crazy things going on, the opportunities have never been greater for pretty much anything that you want to do. And it just as a podcast host myself, I'm always looking to learn, to get better. So I kind of view a lot of what you do as pretty inspirational and try to learn as much as I can. But can you quickly let's take a step back, because I think this will be actually really helpful for everyone listening. Can you tell us a little bit more about, your life story, how you got to the point where you started this Minecraft server at 15 that became one of the biggest ones in the world, and actually explain to everyone out there who's listening who might not be familiar with what that is, exactly what that is, and then also, why and how you kind of went on to start VU Dream, a virtual reality marketing company. And then, after we do that, we can go dive into kind of more of the podcast stuff that I think everyone is really excited about.
Yeah, so I'll just tell you a little bit about my life story. So I was born in 1997 in Boston, East Coast of the United States. And my parents immigrated from Egypt just a year before I was born, after winning the green card lottery. And, so we didn't really have, that much money, but, my parents really hustled and they grinded it out immigrant style, kind of, working our way to, better and better apartment buildings. And so, I had a great childhood. I have great parents, great family, all that stuff. And, when you're in that kind of household, that immigrant household, you unconsciously become a crafty and very resourceful kid. And so, people always ask me, like, how did you do the things that you did when you were younger? And to be totally honest with you, I have no idea. It was very much a, just like an intuitive path. And, to be honest with you, I never really thought twice about my Minecraft server, which we'll get to, until I went on my first podcast in like late 2017. And they told me, they were like, so, we heard you had a pretty big Minecraft server. And, at first I was like, wait, like, who cares? Like, why do you guys want to know about it? But, later I figured out it was, something of significance. And so, as I got older, like when I was 10, 11, 9, that age, I ended up, getting some, physical health issues. When I was born, I almost died from a bacterial infection. And, so I had a few chronic illnesses that ultimately all stem from autoimmune. So things like asthma, IBS, not being able to sleep, nothing too serious, but, things like allergies, rashes, like, it's not like I was in the hospital every day, but, that's the kind of kid that I was. And so, when I look back at my life and, as my parents started to, work their way up, from being, an immigrant, they started to make some money. My dad eventually went from an employee at his store to actually owning that store. And so, we started to make a bit of money, and, we moved to, better and better schools, and eventually we ended up settling down in, this town in Western Massachusetts. And, it was a great town, very small town. But, there was no kind of diversity. And so, I was this kid that, I'm not even from Egypt. I was born here, but my parents are from Egypt. And, there was, everyone else in that school was white. There was no other, sorts of minorities. So, that began the journey of the decline of my mental health, because it gave me this feeling that I was never going to be good enough, that I am always going to be a different person in the room. People are going to, look at me strangely. And, that combined with my physical health issues and some bullying and, some other things along those lines, not taking care of my health because I wasn't conscious of it. I just thought that the diseases that I had were, just things that I was born with. They were just things that, God, quote unquote, had just kind of given to me. And so, throughout my like teenage years, from maybe ages like 10 to all the way until after I graduated high school, 18, I lived inside of a mental prison in my own head. And, I had a wide variety of social anxiety issues. I didn't really talk to people that much. I didn't really have any kind of deep relationships. I didn't play a sport. I didn't do anything collaborative. And so, what ended up happening, and the way that I sort of coped with that, Ben, was I got on the internet when I was really young. So I have memories when I was 11, 12, going online and, just trying to learn things. I learned how to code, and, eventually I ended up, finding YouTube. And I originally found it because I played a lot of video games. That was kind of like my favorite pastime hobby thing. And, I'd go on YouTube because I'd want to know how to get better at the game, so I could, beat like my friends online. And eventually that ended up me, making YouTube videos. And, I was like this 12-year-old kid. Ultimately my YouTube channel had something like 35,000 subscribers. And this is like back in 2011. This was before YouTube was kind of YouTube. So I was just kind of like this kid on the internet posting like these videos from video games that I had played. And, that eventually led me to discovering a game called Minecraft. And, within the first day of me playing Minecraft, I joined with one of my friends, and, he told me that, it was a pretty cool game. And eventually I got on, and we joined some multiplayer servers. And I realized that, all those servers just sucked. They were lagging, or, they weren't really that fun. And so, the next day I ended up starting my Minecraft server. I just Googled how to do everything. Wow. I wasn't some kind of techno wizard. And, after I started the server, I began to, grow it out. People started to join. we got smarter. And then eventually, to keep this story short, I ended up, starting the world's #1 Minecraft server, made a tremendous amount of money from not having any money at all. It's kind of sort of like overnight. And yeah, and honestly, throughout that entire experience, the thing that I learned is that, and I believe that this is what helped me break out of my mental prison later on in my life. But I looked at, the server, and I looked at the money that I was making. It was, six figures, and I came from sort of like this American dream immigrant mentality of, after you graduate school and you go to college and then you get a degree and then you get a six-figure salary, then, all your problems will be gone and, you'll be happy. But, when I was in high school and I was 15 years old, I had already hit that point and I still viewed myself as the same loser kid. And so I didn't really understand it at that time. But what actually had happened is I had achieved society's definition of success, or at least my definition. And so, I just started, becoming even more confused. Obviously, I didn't understand this back then, but, it sent me even a, worse spiral of even more anxiety. And then eventually when I ended up going off to college, that became depression. And so, those were kind of the circumstances that shaped me and who I am today.
Wow, yeah. So you mean that's a great story. It's very powerful, and there's so much there that I want to to unpack. So I'm actually just gonna kind of start with the thing that you mentioned about the immigrant mindset. I think that's so true. My parents actually immigrated as well.
Right.
So growing up, you're always you don't take things for granted. You know that. Although I was born in this country, I always think that, I'm very lucky, I'm blessed to be here. And if you want to progress, you always have to work hard and work on yourself. And I know people, like Gary Vee always talk about how it's actually a blessing, to have that kind of mindset. So, I fully agree. And it's so evident that, just so many people who are, immigrants or children of immigrants end up doing great things because they just think about things differently, and they don't, they're a lot less likely to be complacent, and they always want to improve. So that's, it's an awesome thing that you mentioned. It's a very common thread. One thing I do want to ask is, so many people, are on like the other side. They're young, like you were in high school. They want to be rich. Can you kind of just quickly maybe just tell us how it feels? Like, like you said, you made a ton of money when you were so young. Like what does that feel like? I know it wasn't actually fulfilling, but because, your personal development hadn't actually matched up to your expectations, but for everyone out there who, hasn't had that kind of monetary success and always like kind of dreams about it, although necessarily maybe they shouldn't necessarily dream about that, what is that feeling like? What has that kind of allowed you to do? How does that change your life? Just speak about that like a little bit, just because that's, someone out there who's listening to this is like, oh yeah, he made a ton of money and now he's saying his life kind of sucked, but like whatever, give me a ton of money and then, I'll say the same thing. It's hard to resonate, right, to believe that, but it's definitely true. Can you just kind of tell us like how that felt, like the positives of that, and like what it allowed you to do moving forward in your life?
So that's a great question, Ben. So when I look back at my life, I was and still am not somebody that is motivated by money, and I think that's because my parents always taught me when I was a kid to, focus on the right things, to, choose people over money, and to not make short-term, decisions. And, honestly, the way that I'll answer that question is like, throughout my entire life, I never like genuinely even thought that I could do this. Like I thought that if you were rich, you were like a different kind of person, and that just wasn't for me. But the only thing that I did think about is, as a kid I had a pretty rampant imagination. I would be imagining things 24/7. I was very creative in that sense. And so, to answer your question, the only thing that I wanted was when I'll give you an example or like a little story. So my parents and I and my family, my sister, we used to, drive to and from this place that was on the highway like every week. And, on the side of the highway, there was this place called Outback Steakhouse. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's like a
Yeah,
chain.
a
Yeah, it's
little,
like a chain
definitely have heard of it.
steakhouse. And, this is about when I was like 10, 11, 12. I, when I was sitting in the car and I looked at that Outback Steakhouse, I had actually, never had steak before my entire life. And I always wanted to. And I just, I just had like this feeling that, steak was going to be my favorite food ever. And so, I couldn't have told you this at the time, but, unconsciously or subconsciously, my brain would just like use my imagination to, get me and be like, oh yeah, man, when you walk in, like the steak must taste like this. And, I obviously knew at that time the reason why we didn't was because, steak is pretty expensive for at least, the time that and the money that we were making. And so, I just started
Hmm.
to, use my imagination and be like, man, imagine what it would feel like to walk into that restaurant and, just order anything off the menu without looking at the price. And so when I was a kid, um, my brain was trying to work and using my dreams and imagination to try to get me to a spot to where I was. So, when I started the Minecraft server, I honestly did not think I'd make any money, but through my, subconscious of what it really wanted, it actually started to open those opportunities for me because I had that spot open in my subconscious. And so when you start making money like that and you weren't expecting it and you grew up without not having it, so you don't really want it, because that's just how the way it works. Like it really was just not a big deal to me. And, I didn't even think that it was something of significance. It really was sort of, unconscious. And so, I didn't do anything dumb with my money. I didn't blow it on anything, but, I started to experience a little bit of the freedom of having your own money and being able to do what you want. And so when I had that, it actually led me to, I believe more misery than comfort. Because, I know a lot of your listeners, just like you said, are like, yeah, boo hoo, you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars when you were 15, yet you had all these mental problems. And, it's just like this, money is, just a thing. And, I'm honestly somebody that, values other people. I value honestly influence, reputation, and legacy. Those are the things that turn me on that I've learned about myself. But, when it comes to money, it was never something that was built in my head. And, to kind of paint this picture a little bit, before I interviewed this guy named JT McCormick. He's the CEO of this publishing company called Scribe. And he was a guy who literally grew up with nothing. His dad was a pimp. He was abused. He was raped. It just kind of like worst case scenario. And through one thing or another, he ended up hustling and he ended up working really hard, eventually became a millionaire. But then he lost all of his money. And I asked him, I was like, what does that feel like? And he said that, when you grow up broke and, you make money, yeah, it's cool and everything. But then when you lose it, it's just like, like you were best friends with broke. Like it's just not a big deal to somebody that's already sort of experienced that. So I hope I answered your question.
Yeah, for sure. You definitely did. And I listened to your podcast with JT on the way in this morning. So that's actually awesome that you mentioned it. And to kind of go back to that, that was like very powerful episode. And I think the biggest takeaway, you can correct me if I'm wrong, was that JT just seemed like the guy he was always grateful. He always took responsibility, and no matter what happened, he kept his like mindset positive. And when you keep your mindset positive, anything is possible. And one thing I actually want to ask, in this regards to kind of like how you created that Minecraft server, how you started the podcast, how you started all these things is, what is it about you, or how have you developed this bias for action? Because so many people out there are there's so much good information. There are these podcasts, there's YouTube, there's everything. A lot of people are out there just, taking in content, and sometimes they just never really get anything off the ground. What can you say to those people to,
I love that question.
have them just understand? Yeah, they're like,
you're
never, no one's really ready.
Yeah, I have the answer for it. So this is it, man. So, when I had those physical health problems that eventually transformed into mental health problems is, when I was a kid, when I was like in first or second grade, third grade even, I, was unbelievably smart. I won like student of the month, like 6 times in a row. All my teachers loved me. I would always finish the assignment first. I was just like a really smart kid. But, as my health conditions transformed and, as I moved to that school that I told you, I became a very, very bad student. And it wasn't like, I would like go walk in and spit on the teacher's face, or I'd like fail classes, but just in more the sense of like, I would go into the back of the classroom and sit down, and then I would knock out. I'd fall asleep because my body didn't have the physical energy to keep me up. And when I was up, I had absolutely zero focus. Like I remember probably when I had turned 19, I actually understood what being focused was. Up to that point, I was never really focused on anything unless it was, a certain video game. But yeah, so I was a bad student in the sense of like, I just got bad grades because I couldn't keep up. And, so I got C's and D's, and if I was lucky, I got a B. But honestly, what that taught me, man, is the answer to your question, because I learned that, all these kids in school right now, that, are in their classes and they're taking them seriously, and, they're in math class or they're in geography, and, they raise their hand to, answer the teacher's question. That is just kind of like regurgitation, and, taking tests and either passing them or failing them. What that actually does is it reprograms your brain to look for approval on the outside world, because you're always trying to get an A. You're always trying to, pass that test. So, it's a complicated reason. For some people, when you were a little kid and, you got an A on your quiz, and, you go home and you tell your mom, she's like, wow, Ben, you're so smart, man. Like, I love you. And she gives you a hug, and then she might even like give you like a treat or a cookie or something. And so what that does is it programs your brain to look for approval on the outside world. And I didn't have any bit of that at all. I was just kind of in my own bubble. So when it came time to actually take action and execute something in the real world, it's just never been a problem for me, because I've always just kind of been running it with my own hands all the time. And, because I punted school, I don't have that, need for approval. And, Ben, I literally could not agree more with you, man. I'm really glad you asked me this question, because, I see my friends that I grew up with today that, are literally facing this issue right now. They are like unbelievably smart people. They are intelligent. They are talented, but they haven't done anything with their lives other than sort of like the status quo of going to college, because they have that sense of approval because they really hustled when they were younger. And so when it comes to me, I just do, and I think about it later. And I really do believe that's because I completely, punted school, and I'm not waiting for a teacher to tell me if I'm right or wrong. I'm just going to do it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, Mark, that definitely does. And, the way you answered it, I think is, it's super interesting, because, that's not how people kind of think about these things. They don't think about it being, kind of programmed into them from an early age. And now they're here wondering, like, how can I change myself? How can I change myself? But they have to understand that, this is something that has developed for years, and it won't change overnight. You just have to slowly start doing and doing and doing. And like you said, that's the way to improve. So to build off of that, what advice would you have to, for someone who, say they're, 17, 18, just finishing up high school, and now, the traditional route is going to college. Everyone knows that. And by now it's pretty standard. Like if you want a job, for the most part, or at least for the most part, what people think is you have to go to college. What would you tell someone who isn't sure what to do with their life as they're finishing high school? Like what just kind of generic advice do you have for someone there? Yeah, that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So, honestly, I think that, it's very, very context dependent. And, I don't want to like shit on college or anything because, it may not be a great like business deal to pay $30,000 to take a few obsolete classes, depending on the school you want. But, I definitely would not be where I am today if I didn't go to college. It expanded my worldview, but, I don't think it's necessary for everyone. And so, I think whether you are going to go to college or, you're not, I think you've got to focus on some of the foundational elements of your life that you are going to carry with you forever. And so, if you take a look at, your life, what are some fundamental foundations that, you're going to need to have for the rest of your life? And so the first thing that comes to mind for me is, your mindset. Your mind is something that you're going to have with you forever. And, in fact, your mind and your body are the only things that in the world that are going to be with you in every single damn moment of your life. And so I would recommend people that are young to like really focus on developing their minds and a healthy body. And so what I mean by that is, I think there is honestly a impending crisis in America and the entire world. I think it's little kids eating shitty food like Kool-Aid and cupcakes and muffins that's causing a bunch of behavioral disorders like autism, like ADHD, like all the things that little kids right now are being medicated for. And so, Ben, how I got, like, I'm actually cured of my chronic illnesses. I went to my doctor a couple years ago when I had kind of gone down this evolution of myself, and all of the illnesses, all of the symptoms that I previously had are now gone. And that's because I really focused on my food, my nutrition, and everyone, there's no such thing as a healthy universal diet. And so research now is saying that the most important thing about yourself is the microbiome. It is this expansive gut microbial network that is in all of your organs. And, you might have heard of it. They're saying that the gut is now the second brain. And, if you just take an example, like, have you ever heard of the chemical serotonin?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, depending on who you ask, they're saying that serotonin is this chemical that your brain produces, and it's mostly responsible for your happiness, for how you perceive yourself in the world. And, a lot of SSRIs, antidepressants that are being prescribed today, they increase the amount of serotonin. They actually found out that 90% of your serotonin receptors are in your gut. And so I've actually gotten my entire gut microbiome sequenced. And I'm not just talking about like some DNA test, because all the DNA tests that are now coming out that have to do with food are complete BS. And the reason is, the human body, our genome only expresses 20,000 human genes. And it turns out that, there are 2 to 20 million bacterial genes that are being expressed. So, in a way, then we're actually less than 1% human. But when it comes to our microbiome, each one of us, there's less than a 5% similarity. So, a diet that may be good for you may be bad for me. But just kind of like as a general, like nobody should be eating processed crap, like anything that comes in a bag or anything that has, when you flip it on the back, there's an ingredient that you don't recognize. Because if you don't recognize the ingredient, your body won't recognize it either. And so I think getting your microbiome sequenced to, tackle your health problems, even if you don't have them, is probably like the best future foundational thing. It completely changed my life. I am, now living symptom free. I haven't been sick in like the last 3 years. And I think it really has to do with the gut microbiome. And then the other part of that is, you got to do some kind of exercise. And I don't mean like you got to go to the gym and lift weights, although you definitely should. But I think it's just about finding whatever you possibly can. So, if you're somebody that likes running, or maybe you don't like intense physical activity, you want to do something like yoga, I think that's also a good way to do that in your body. And, in terms of this is biological, but in terms of kind of like the mindset, I recommend people to start mindfulness meditation. Some people say, meditation isn't for everyone. And, I don't think there is anything in this world that is for everyone. But I want to say that mindfulness meditation is a cognitive technology that has been used for thousands of years to get people to stop believing their thoughts. Because, man, most people go crazy when they go older because they actually start to believe their thoughts. Because the average human has 60,000 thoughts a day, and 90% of them are identical from yesterday. And when you start meditating, it actually starts to rewire those circuits that you've built in your mind. So whether you're trying to learn a skill or get a new job or start a company or be an entrepreneur, you need to really work on, literally your mind. And so, the best exercise for your mind, one of them is mindfulness meditation. So I think, focusing on those things are really, really important. And, two last things that I want to say is, you've really got to focus on sleep, especially younger kids. Like, you've got to be sleeping, I don't even want to say 7 to 8 hours. I just want to mostly say 8 hours. But, everyone is different. And so, prioritizing your sleep every day, like as if, you have it on your schedule and it's something that does not get moved. So, for me, I have sleep on my schedule. I go to sleep from 9 to, and I wake up at 5 a.m. I sleep for 8 hours, and that's just non-negotiable because, sleep is of the utmost importance. And, probably the last thing that I'll say, Ben, is you've got to start building your personal brand on social media. You've got to start networking with people, and you've got to use the internet to do that. If you are somebody who's lucky enough to, be born in an awesome family with an awesome environment that has connections, go for it. But, we're also living in a time where anybody in the entire world can now build their own network. And, your network then translates in the future to, potential business opportunities, to just you learning, because people actually, want to help you in your life, but they have to know that you exist. And using social media, starting your own personal brand, even if you don't necessarily have anything to say, but, you're just sharing what you learned. Like, for my podcast, now I kind of like am more forward towards the camera, and now I try to teach people stuff. But, at first I didn't, and I just interviewed people and showed their lessons. And so I think if you focus on things that you're going to carry with you your entire life while you're young, you're going to be way ahead of the rest. And, you're going to thank your future self for sure.
Awesome, Mark. That was, there was so much value in there that, if I would try to unpack it, we would be here for hours. So I'm not going to do that. I'm just kind of quickly reinforce a lot of what you said. I think that, focusing on mind and body is so, so key. Personally, that's something that, that's my biggest focus for this year, for probably the rest of my life.
Can I say something?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I was just going to say that if anybody is actually going to take their health seriously and you want to get your entire microbiome sequenced, I actually interviewed this guy named Naveen Jain, episode 139, and he's like this billionaire that came from like the streets of India, and he has a space company, the world's only space company that has authorization to land on the moon. And,
Oh, wow.
I personally believe he's going to be the next trillionaire. But he also started this healthcare company from, have you ever heard of Los Alamos Labs?
I actually haven't, no.
Yeah. So it's where the atomic bomb was created by the U.S. government military. And so, Naveen went to this laboratory and he found out that the government had spent billions of dollars for national defense because they built this tool in case of, if in America, if there's some kind of like a bioterrorist attack in like a city or something, and where, there's some kind of chemical agent that's getting people sick, the government has to know what exactly is going on in your body cell by cell. So Naveen saw this technology and he was like, wait, what if I took this and I reverse engineered it to get people to be healthy? And so I like, it's actually available today. The company's called Viome, Viome. I've done it for myself, and that's how I've become completely disease free. And I recommend it for everyone. The default price of it is $400, but if you go to Viome.com/friend of Naveen, the billionaire's name, that's the code that he gave me, it'll give you $100 off. So if you've got the money and you're going to take your health seriously, I highly recommend to do that, because it's actually the world's only functional microbiome test. All the other ones like Ubiome and all the other ones that you find when you Google it are just stealing people's money. And so I think that could be a really good step if people are interested.
Wow, yeah, that's super awesome. I've never actually even heard of it. So thanks for mentioning it. I'm definitely going to check that out. And I know as we're winding down, I just have one final question. And this regards to, kind of what you were talking about, like building your brand on social media, reaching out to people, and also ties into the fact about how you mentioned that one of the things you really care about in life is, like building meaningful connections. Can you give, like, just explain to everyone out there, including me, I'm a podcaster, and one of the things, obviously, is you have to build connections with the people you're talking to, build connections with people on social to then have on your podcast. What's like the one piece of advice that you can give everyone to build those meaningful connections, be genuine about it, not be someone who's just trying to get something from someone else? Like, what have you learned from interviewing all these people and, breaking free from your severe, like, social anxiety, all that you now know and is really the key to doing that?
Yeah. So, in terms of, getting people on your podcast, I think it's all about, climbing the ladder. So, the first, I didn't really get a quote unquote, like, big high profile guest on my show until like episode 40. And so, I think there's a lot of, footwork that, you've got to, put in. And especially now because, there's more podcasts out there than ever. And, when people check out your podcast and they see you've only done like 5 episodes, they're more or less likely not gonna join, because, they're just gonna say, hey, you are like the 99% of people that start podcasts and then end up quitting, and they don't want to invest their time in that. And so I think a big part of it is, to keep that in mind and, to really find, where they live on the internet. For me, it's definitely probably like LinkedIn and Instagram. And so you've got to find where these people are living, where they spend most of their time on social media. And you just got to engage relentlessly with them, like comment on every post, give your genuine feedback, send them messages, do all that kinds of things. And, down the road, that's how you get those doors to open up for you. And so, that's my number one tip for getting guests. And in terms of the, social anxiety, honestly, so first off, I think health, like everything we just talked about, from the microbiome to sleep to exercising to finding a stress reducing mechanism like meditation or like yoga, I think those are kind of like the pillars, because I've actually learned that, anxiety is actually a symptom, not for every case, but it's actually a symptom of having an unbalanced microbiome. It's definitely not like that for everyone, but I think my issue was a combination of both. And so, the number one tip that, I can give to anyone, if they want to evolve, and, basically all my podcast guests have talked about this, but it is the concept of actually letting yourself face the pain. When I went off to college and I got depressed and I actually became obese. I was over 200 pounds because I was just kind of binge eating myself away. And so, some people will go through that, be over 200 pounds. Like they just they will do some kind of behavior that is not in line with their true self. And, they'll look at a mirror and, they'll say, oh yeah, I've gained a couple pounds. It's not too big of a deal. But, I don't really believe in that approach. I believe that, in order to change something in your life, you've got to become really aware and you've got to become really honest with yourself. And, other than the health part, I honestly believe that the reason why I lived in that kind of mental prison was because I was lying to myself. And, I don't necessarily mean like just directly lying to yourself, but I mean like, doing certain things and then like forgetting that they happened, or I'd push them in the corner of my mind in the dark where I'd never think about them again. And it's just like, you know what? You can live your life any way you want to. It's your life. But I believe that if you really want to develop yourself, you got to look at yourself, in the eyes, in the mirror, and just come to terms and be like, hey, maybe I'm not pudgy. Maybe I need to lose a serious amount of weight because I don't want to die from, getting obesity or diabetes. And I think you really have to be honest with yourself. People call it the brutal truth. But, if you're living in this ocean of, complacency and comfort, and, all the people around you are telling you, oh yeah, it's not a big of a deal. And, they're probably saying that because they love you and they mean good things. But if you're living in that, you are never going to grow. And so I think you need to get really honest with yourself. And, for those of you that know what Ben, do you know what a chiropractor is?
Yeah, I do.
Yes. So for those of you guys that don't know, a chiropractor is like it has to do with, aligning your musculoskeletal system and like the spine and, putting you in alignment. And, one of my friends of mine, Billy Alsbrooks, he has this great quote, and it says, truth is the chiropractor of the mind. Right thinking sustained long enough will lead you to success. And so, I think that, you really, really need to, be honest with yourself and not lie, and really look at yourself in the mirror and, come to terms with all the decisions that you've made in your life.
Awesome, Mark. And, there we have it. That so much value has been dropped here. I think that, everyone listening, just re-listen to this, dive deep into everything that Mark, that you're mentioning. I think there's just so much there to unpack. But, as we have to go, I really want to thank you for coming on. One last thing is, we're going to link to, your social profiles, all of that. But if someone wants to directly connect with you, what is the best medium to do so?
Yeah, so Instagram, LinkedIn is the best, or you can email me at mark@vudream.com.
All right, awesome. There you have it, guys. Thanks again, Mark. It was really great speaking with you.
Yeah, you too, Ben.
All right.
Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much. Hey guys, thank you so much for listening. If you like what you heard, go rate and subscribe to the podcast. Even share it with your friends if you found the lessons valuable. We do the show every week, so stay tuned for more episodes. And till next time.